So, I finally watched American Fiction, and the ending absolutely broke me. I was mad, I was confused, I was going through the stages of grief because American Fiction made me feel seen. As dumb and pretentious as that might sound, I was intrigued by Jeffrey Wright's struggles when it came to writing and what he deemed good, and what a mass audience actually wants to see. The film joins Wes Anderson's The French Dispatch, which also stars Wright, in films that are a love letter to writers. Although throughout the film, I was thematically reminded of Boots Riley's underrated 2018 comedy, Sorry to Bother You. Both films tackle themes of how we value perceived blackness in American society, and how all races become confined to the storytelling of stereotypes. The film is consistently funny, and its performances are worthy of their Oscar nominations. Sterling K. Brown is an absolute highlight in the film, and I really wish we got to see more of him, but his scene before the wedding might just be the best scene in the whole movie. It's the one part of the film where the family drama element comes full circle for me, and while my thoughts are all over the place right now, let's get into the review. Okay, this is the part of the film that pulled me in the most, hence why it shares the title of the review. But before we deep dive into the complex issues that Monk faces internally throughout the film, I want to read a poem. It's called Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. Please, stay with me here. I promise it will all tie back together. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if I had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great, and would suffice. Look, what exactly am I trying to say by bringing a 100-year-old poem about the destruction of the world into a 100-day-old movie about a man's internal conflict? It's that Frost's words can be fit directly into Monk's conflict. In the poem's simplest interpretation, fire is meant to be the desire of man, whereas ice is the hate that we hold for one another. How if either were to be left unchecked, it would bring us to the end. How if the writer were to be destroyed by one, desire is a more pleasant end than a hateful one. Now, let's bring this back to Monk. Swap fire to mean his desire for success. He is a struggling writer that receives critical acclaim, but nobody actually buys his books. His family is hit with a freight train of hard times, and if he doesn't find success soon, things are going to go from bad to worse. Now, let's swap ice for the hatred that Monk holds upon society. A society that continues to flaunt and push out the narrative that African American stereotypes and struggles are the only stories worth telling in media. How a, in quotes, black voice has to be tied to a barrage of violence, poverty, struggling in the hood, gangs, police conflict, and a lack of formal education. These are things that Monk hates to see around him, and he is absolutely correct. A random shot in the dark, but remember, Green Book won Best Picture only 5 years ago. Okay, but back to the film. He writes what he deems to be the most pandering, unpretentious, exploitative book that he can think of. He writes it with the pen name all as a joke, and after publishing so much acclaim to no financial follow-through, this book actually makes him a millionaire, because he was right. And now he is torn towards his own mental destruction, either death by his desire, where he continues to live a lie but finds financial security, ultimately bending a knee to the capitalism that drives art. Or he can die from his hatred of it all. Be honest, leave the opportunity that stands before him, and let his ego win. All the while he has his own personal dignity intact, those that he cares about will suffer because he let the world freeze over in ice, freeze over in hate. The film uses satire to cover this topic with nuance. It pokes fun at both the left and right side of politics, which really made Monk's struggles even funnier, because it seemed as though no matter who he turned to, he was completely let down. Whether it be his girlfriend, other writers, his manager, movie producers, or other highly regarded judges of literature, they all fell into the same category. They all wanted his joke of a book to be a success. There is so much of this that we can see as a mirror to real life, especially in the medium of film. Taking a look at what gets produced and pushed upon the general masses, there are distinct voices that often work through the budget of indie productions, but when it comes to the checkbook of someone like Disney, Paramount, Warner Brothers, or Universal, you know that a project is going to be hit with a fine-tooth comb to make sure it is as marketable as possible. Now, I know there's always exceptions, but I'm speaking in a general sense. Issa Rae's character provides an opposite counterpoint to Monk. She is a woman who writes seriously about the topics that Monk looks down upon. She puts research and time into what she assumes is garbage because it gives others a voice, even if it isn't her own. And much to Monk's dismay, she is happy with this choice. There's an entire essay that could be written about their one scene together near the end of the film and what it all means. What it all says about our society with the way we deem minorities as successful, and those within success should treat one another due to the principles and expectations. There's even an argument that can be made that Golden, Issa Rae's character, is in the right when she says that her book is good, but Monk's is soulless and pandering. Even if they are stylistically similar, Monk wrote his book in a single night while drinking, whereas Golden has taken a level of pride to her work. Monk also hasn't even actually sat down to read the book, and while his mind probably can't be changed due to his ego, I don't think he gives Golden enough of a fair shot. And these are all things to say about Monk's struggle throughout the film and how they reflect modern American culture. There are people who want art to be like Monk, where race and politics aren't used to define it. And there are people like Golden who use race and the politics of the business as a stepping stool to make their work seen. One isn't necessarily better than the other, but Monk's way sure stands as a never-ending battle for his personal ego. Okay. This is the portion of the review where I speak on American Fiction purely as a film and a piece of entertainment. There was a lot I enjoyed in the just under 2-hour runtime. The performances were all great and worthy of their praise. They elevated the film to be better than the script might have been on its own. Director Cord Jefferson does a fine job for his first theatrical film, although I do think the Academy was right in their nominations. American Fiction being nominated for its screenplay and acting, as well as how it stands as an overall film, was the correct call. While watching, there weren't any directed scenes where I said to myself, wow, how did they do that? Or, wow, this was a really well-directed scene. Most of it is standard, and for the genre and material of the film, that is totally fine. That's not to discredit Jefferson as a director, but in a year with films such as Poor Things, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Oppenheimer, I merely thought the directing and cinematography aspects of the film were good, and that's okay. American Fiction's script is really the star here. In a year where films that were billed as comedies really struggled for me, it turns out that the Oscar-nominated dramas have some of the best jokes of 2023. Jefferson's writing is sharp and playfully satirical where it needs to be, paired with Wright's deadpan delivery, and Monk was such a fascinating and layered protagonist. Going back to Sterling K. Brown and his character Cliff, I felt his payoff of acceptance by Lorraine and Maynard was incredibly sweet and touching. He is a character that has clearly been through a lot before the events of the movie. Coming out as gay and losing both his wife and children to divorce, a father that clearly didn't care about him, a mother who deep down is disgusted by his sexuality, a brother who doesn't call and drifts away from his family, and worst of all, he is stuck living in Tucson, Arizona, where there is only one gay bar and all the college students assume that he's Tyler Perry. So yeah, life's rough. Yet Lorraine, who is the family's housemaid and has seen these children grow up, still loves him unconditionally. For Cliff to finally get a moment of true acceptance for who he is as a person, it really tied everything together for me. Now, I need to talk about my negatives for the film, and there is one, and it's a bit of a big one. Pacing. The film is just under 2 hours in length, and the first and third acts completely fly by, but somewhere in the second act, American Fiction begins to stall. If I had to boil it down, I think it all ties back to Agnes, Monk's mom, who is struggling through the development of Alzheimer's. Which is a shame because Leslie Uggams gives a great somber performance as her mind slowly drifts away. But her scenes feel as if they go on a bit too long, or perhaps a few of them could have been cut. Her character and the familial conflict is integral to Monk's journey and decisions, but I feel as though there could have been a way to make the runtime and screenplay just a little tighter. It's truly a film of two halves, and at times the tone between the absurd comedy and bold family drama just doesn't work in sync, creating a tonal clash between some of the integral scenes. Outside of this, though, I felt that American Fiction was successful in what it set out to achieve, and I am ecstatic to see what Cord Jefferson both writes and directs next, because he definitely has a vision and eye for storytelling. Living here in Japan, I was unable to see American Fiction in a crowded cinema. But even while watching it at home, I could tell that the ending might be divisive amongst moviegoers. Spoilers ahead for the ending of American Fiction. Skip here if you would like to avoid them. Okay, so in the climax, Monk's joke of a novel, aptly titled Fuck, wins the honorary literary award. Having absolutely enough of everything that has happened, he finally lets Ice win and walks up to accept the award, revealing to the world that he is, in fact, the writer. Just as he is about to have this big moment, the film cuts to black. And no, that's not the ending. It is then revealed that the entire award show scene was a pitch that Monk was making to a Hollywood producer who was trying to make Fuck into a film. It's left ominous if people actually know the truth or not, or whether Monk has spun his true story into another, more tolerable way of letting his lie continue on his own terms. But the producer doesn't like that ending. So Monk makes another tolerable suggestion, and the producer still doesn't like it. Then, with a smile of defeat, Monk goes back into the fire. In the film adaptation's ending, the FBI break into Monk's awards ceremony, thinking that he is the writer Stagg, the fake wanted criminal who Monk created and used as a pen name. The officers then see the award in Monk's hand, mistake it for a gun, and open fire, killing Monk and leaving him in a pool of his own blood. It's as hilarious as it is maddening. But it's also one of the endings to African American stories that was foreshadowed by Monk's disdain at the opening of the film. The movie seems to have been greenlit by the producer, and Cliff picks Monk up at the Hollywood lot. We never learn if Monk reveals the truth, or how far his lie will go. We never see if Coraline took Monk back. The final mention of her is that she isn't returning his calls. We never see how long Agnes lives or if she continues to worsen with the Alzheimer's. The film just sort of ends, and that's okay. Now, stay with me here. One of my favorite endings ever was for Netflix's animated comedy, Bojack Horseman. No, please, stay with me. I promise this is still relevant. A story that also takes place in a exaggerated, fictionalized version of LA. It chronicles the events and continued rise and fall of our title character. Now, again, spoilers ahead for Bojack Horseman. At the end of the series, Bojack essentially parts way with everyone he, at least in some capacity, cared for. Todd is independent and has moved out of his house, forgiving Bojack for the many terrible, atrocious things that he did to him, but not necessarily being his friend again. Princess Carolyn is no longer Bojack's agent, and while they will slowly drift away, they at least leave on decent terms. And then there's the final conversation with Diane, who more than likely will never see Bojack again. They don't get complete closure. Instead, they choose to look up into the night sky in silence. The series ends, and Bojack doesn't get the finality to his ending. Instead, I've interpreted the series as being just one chapter in the larger story that's Bojack's life. Events came before, and events will come after, but that isn't for the audience to see. In a series that had so many highs and lows, the ending feels poetic. And American Fiction, in a way, follows this idea. It's poetic. Monk and Cliff drive off to continue their lives. The film said what it needed to thematically, even if we don't get the answers as an audience. Just before leaving, Monk sees and acknowledges an actor that is in costume as a southern plantation slave. He gives him a nod and a brief smile. Perhaps Monk's world will end in fire. Perhaps he found the middle ground between selling his ego for the gain of capitalistic wealth, or perhaps he learned to accept the truth that actually surrounds him. And maybe, perhaps, his world isn't going to end after all. I really didn't expect to have this much to say about American Fiction, as I've said so far. The film is bold in its vision and balances its humor to talk about real societal issues in current American culture, whether it be about race, wealth, education and intelligence, the importance of art and what it says on behalf of the artist, or how we perceive our own personal values. I don't expect American Fiction to actually win any Oscars come March. While I think Wright, Brown, and Jefferson behind the pen are all brilliant, it's just an incredibly crowded and stacked year. But I do think its 5 nominations, including Best Picture, are a highlight of the talent involved in telling its story and speaking on behalf of these issues. Oh, and one last thing. As a consolation prize, I'd like to award the film the 2019 Oscar for Best Picture, because it sure as hell is better than Green Book. 8 out of 10. Okay, goodbye. Thank you so much for watching my review on American Fiction. Let me know down below what you guys thought of the film, and what movies you think will win some Oscars this year. I personally have a battle between Poor Things and Oppenheimer taking place, but that's just me. Like, subscribe, and as always guys, have a good one.